It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new author, or in this case, a returning author, to talk about their work. And we're proud to welcome back Joe Clifford. Joe's memoir, Junkie Love, chronicles his battle with drugs. It was first published in 2010 and it was re-released in 2018. He's also the author of the award-winning J. Porter thriller series. So how many books are we into that now, Joe? 5, 6?
Well, if you're counting Say My Name, which I count is sort of the unofficial sixth Porter book. And people who have read the Porter books will see why, although it's not necessary to have read those 5 books. So 5.5, we'll say.
Okay. Okay, so 5.5, which have received rave reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and the San Francisco Chronicle, among many others. Additionally, he's written several standalones, including The One That Got Away, The Lakehouse, The Shadow People, and Say My Name, which we're going to be talking about today. Joe is also the editor of Trouble in the Heartland, crime stories based on the songs of Bruce Springsteen, and Just Watch Him Die, crime fiction inspired by the songs of Johnny Cash. Currently, Joe teaches online writing courses for FIU, my old stomping grounds. Well, actually, I was University of Miami, as well as around the country at various conferences and retreats, or frankly, anywhere someone will pay him. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
I just love that intro. And it just sets the tone for our discussion today. So you mentioned Say My Name. Now, Say My Name is currently available for pre-order, correct?
Or... It is. It's available for pre-order, and through a glitch of just the Matrix, you can actually get the paperback now. So it's technically our launch date is the 6th. But that's if you want to read it a little sooner, you can actually get the paperback now. So
okay, great. So so we talked about this is interesting because you said it's a standalone. It could be a Joe Porter. It's tangentially J. Porter. Sorry. Tell us about the book and why you say that. And
well, I've been this origin story a few times, but it was born of misunderstanding Jess Lurie's Unspeakable Things. And if you haven't read Jess, correct that right now, she's just absolutely amazing. But in her introduction to that book, she talks about a series of crimes in her hometown that led to it was the impetus for her writing that book. And I misunderstood that she was going to be writing a true crime novel. And because I'm a little slow on the uptake, it was a few chapters in before I realized, wait a second, this book is fiction. And then I went back to my original misunderstanding. And I was like, wait a second, I kind of like that idea. You have an author, a mystery author who's entered the profession because they were so deeply impacted by a hometown event, tragedy, disappearance, whatever. And that's led them into their career path. What if I have my protagonist, in this case, a mid-list 50-something writer who could or could not be me, returning home to his alma mater, Central Connecticut State University, where he has an opportunity to teach, which I did, and that opportunity fell through. But then through a series of unforeseen circumstances, he's drawn back into the original disappearance of twins that inspired his being a crime writer in the first place. So I had that meta take on not only the crime, but you also have what's going on in your life as the author. So the I, everybody knows, first person, you have I, and it's, how removed are we from the I? Not to get too much into the discussion of craft, but this time, the I, we're very close. I mean, I'm writing I, and it's
me.
Well, one of the funny parts of this, it's not so funny for my wife, but it's funny to me, and she was very upset because the protagonist is divorced in the book. He returns home after getting divorced, and she took that very personally because she couldn't separate the I from, I mean, honey, no, it's not. I'm just, I'm imagining, what would happen if, if we, but no intention, anyway, it was kind of adorable, but it made her very upset. She couldn't read the book. Very cute. She's born, Bay Area people are very, they're very sweet, very,
That's reassuring, Joe.
it's,
That she's holding on. That's good.
it was just, it's cute. At first it upset, I'm like, and then somebody was like, oh my God, that's adorable. And it really is kind of adorable. But yeah, so this divorce writer goes home and meets up with old friends. But the cool thing I got to do with this book is because all the Porter stuff is based on my hometown of Berlin, not spelled like Berlin, Germany, but do not make that mistake. They get very upset. Berlin, Connecticut. All the places in the Porter series, the Olympia Diner and the Great Taste Restaurant and all these, just, Mount Lamentation is actually in Berlin, Connecticut. I changed, Lamentation and I put it up in New Hampshire because I wanted it colder. Mount Lamentation is actually rather pleasant in the Porter series, basically a gulag. But it was fun to revisit these, these locations and these settings, is the real life inspiration behind a fictional creation that is now proving to be a true crime story about a crime that didn't happen, or did it? So you get this sort of, this Twilight Zone element, which was a lot of fun. And I've always, enjoyed the Twilight Zone. And the Twilight Zone, actually, Twilight Zone plays a rather prominent role in this book as well. So yeah, it's the Hall of Mirrors cast back on itself, and what's real and what's not real. And I find that fascinating, from the Matrix to Christopher Nolan's Memento, or I mean, all those kind of, I love those trippy sort of, is what's happening, takes on reality. So yeah, and that really reinvigorated my passion for writing. Not that I've grown sour on it. It's just, you write and you write and you write, and you get obstacles, and I was really, this freed me up in a way that I hadn't been freed up probably since Junkie Love, to do some of my most original writing, which was great. It was fun.
So, it's hard enough to write a book in a linear fashion, that's kind of straightforward, plot driven story, but to write a book like you're talking about, that requires you to be in different mindsets and different shifts, and to imply questions and imply questions in the reader's mind and as the writer. So how did you go about writing this book? I mean, was it like, okay, is it stream of consciousness? Is it outline? Do you need to outline if you're going to have a complex sort of presentation like this? How did you approach that?
This was very similar to Junkie Love, and Junkie Love was written very episodic, nonlinear, and for whatever reason, my mind operates exactly the opposite of the way you said. It's easier for me to write nonlinear because I'm kind of all over the place. In fact, I remember working with Dan Wakefield, who was one of my professors at FIU, and he was telling me this just horror story about how cutting and pasting when he started writing, because he's famous for writing New York in the 50s and Kerouac and all those guys, and you literally cut and pasted. That's where it came from. I can't imagine being a writer without that tool, because I will go back and often have to put scenes in order into Porter stuff, or a standalone, or a linear story, because my mind kind of jumps all over the place. And I don't know if it's because of all the drugs I did, or I'm just naturally is a disposition towards just telling stories that way. I don't know. So it's more my natural voice to do that. Of course, you still have to, everything has to tie together, and you still have to go around and tie those, make those connections. But it's actually easier for me to write non-linear. So no, I didn't need an outline. That reminds me an awful lot of high school. It kind of terrifies me. I've done it before, and I know some people. Yeah, so it's both. It's kind of stream of conscious. It's kind of that. I forget who said it. Oh, E.L. Doctorow, about riding, driving across country at night with your headlights. You can only see as far, and it's how my mind works. So I kind of threw it all on the page, and then you got this just puzzle, and you're putting everything back in order.
So do you write in, okay, this is what's going to happen next? Or you write until you figure that out? Or do you write scenes in your head and then, like you
I
said, organize
spend,
them? Or how does that work?
going back to my lovely wife, I feel for her because I remember seeing it at dinner table one day, the dinner table one night. She's just like, "You're gone. You're gone again. I can see." And I spend my whole life in a daze. I mean, I'm writing now. I'll be writing later on. You're in the grocery store and you're figuring out plot. My life is my work, and that sounds so pretentious. I sound like that King Missile song. What's that King Missile song? I'm a serious artist. No, I'm not. Jesus, but yeah, but I spend so much time in my head that you're always sort of working out these problems and you're working out solutions and you're vaguely cognizant. I'm vaguely aware when I'm anywhere. Like I'm hardly present because my half my brain is somewhere else. I'm thinking of I'm working on a story now that's sort of, this is a sort of a follow up to the Porter. I'm writing on a sort of follow up to Say My Name, which is it. I got this universe going on, and once I open this kind of this portal, which is another pretentious word, I can't close it, and now I've got all these ideas, kind of, the bats and the belfry and all that, and I write a lot. I spend a lot of time writing.
Well, I think, just listening to you explains some of the depth in your work. The fact that you're so submerged in this world, that the reader also gets drawn in, to that level. And in Junkie Love, your prose, it's different, but it's cool and it's stimulating, and you get a feeling like the books are like things you haven't read before. So I wonder, if this sounds very, the plot sounds okay. I'm could be a mystery trope, mid-list author comes back, which I love. I love reading stories about authors because I know how inward thinking you have to be to write about that, and how much authors hate that. So for the most part, so I love author stories because it's like it's revealing. You can't help but reveal yourself no matter what. So I do love those stories.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something I vowed I'd never do. And Josh Kendall, who's a friend of mine, who's the editor over at Mulholland, and when I showed him this book, he's like, no stories about writers. And I understand that, I get that. And if the story, didn't require that it be about a writer, I really wouldn't have done it, because I try to eschew that. But I also play with that idea as well. A writer about a writer about a writer. You see, again, you're going down that that hall of mirrors sort of thing.
But you know what? That's writers see things so differently, that the writer as your eyes into a story makes for a different story.
I
Because
don't want
writers
to.
do look at things
I
differently.
don't want to quote myself, but I'm going to, because we're running out of time. And there's a line in Say My Name where I make an allusion to, like, I vow now to never write a book with a writer as a protagonist. We are only interesting to ourselves. So,
No, untrue. Because Castle was on for 8 seasons.
yeah. If you can get away with it,
proves-
rules. If you can get away with it, you can get away with it. That's the great thing about breaking rules, right? Like, you have all these things like, Elmore Leonard's, you don't begin with, but then those are all out the window. If you can pull it off, you pull it off. And in a way, it's sort of a challenge. I remember Todd Robinson a long time ago when he ran Thuglit saying, "Do not send me a story about serial killers," which I took as a personal challenge. So I wrote him a story about a serial killer, and it was probably my favorite short story I've ever written, Red Pistachios. And Todd loved it because I found a way to get beyond his own prejudice, which is, you're making your job harder, but it's also kind of cool. You find a way to cheat.
Well, if you're a professional writer, you have to look at ways to motivate yourself, because, like we were talking about earlier, it's not easy. It's solitary. It's a solitary pursuit, and except with you, because thank God you have your wife there to support you and torment and all those other things. But to be able to keep doing that, to be a professional and to keep turning out good quality work, you have to be able to inspire yourself. So those are all great things. So when I always like to ask writers, do you think about readers when they're reading your work? And when you're writing the ending, do you say, okay, this is how I want the reader to feel when they finish a story or when they read the book? Or do you just follow the natural progression? Or how much thought do you put into the books and the endings from
I write for the reader. They always ask you, like, what's the best advice for, or I think the worst advice is, and it's just one of those things. It's like, we just one platitude we say, you got to write for yourself. We don't write for ourselves. We write for our audience. And if I write a book and say, I don't mind saying a book of mine has flopped or a book of mine has failed. And I, will take a look at my most recent book, The Shadow People, which I loved, and it didn't sell particularly well. And I can blame the entire world, or I can say I didn't do my job right? I mean, whatever I was trying to get across, for whatever reason, it also came out during the pandemic, so we have that excuse.
Right.
It's a good excuse. But still, you have to look at, if you're not getting the reaction from your readers that you want, you're the only person who has a say in that, right? You put it out in the world and people read it and they're going to react the way they react. And I think the reader's always on my mind. I'm trying to please the reader without, placating. And that's a fine line we got to walk. But yeah, ignoring the readers, you can't do that because they're your audience, they're your customer, right? And they're your consumer. And you also can't just tell a story for the market because that rings disingenuous and people sniff that out and that doesn't play. So you're walking that line where you're satisfying yourself and you're satisfying the reader, and you're trying to come to that ending that's both organic, and unexpected and inevitable. And it's really it's fascinating just from a psychological standpoint, which you have to do. And you got a very, very narrow margin. You're kind of like that high, the high diver who has to land in the cup of water, which I don't know if that was ever real or just a cartoon I grew up with in the 80s, but
it works in this.
Yeah, for this analogy, it does. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So, I can talk about your books from a reader's perspective. If you're looking for a book that draws you in and puts you in a different place, not only a different setting, but a different mindset, and really attracts all your senses, because again, your prose is so different, and so clean and clear. So, that's my perspective. But what do you hope? Let's talk about Say My Name. What do you hope a reader feels when they finish Say My Name?
First, I just want to say the single greatest compliment I can get is when somebody remarks on my syntax and prose. Nobody ever notices. I spend so much time. It is really, it makes my heart swell. Because nobody knows, that syntax and prose are everything to me. And there are so many writers and so many, it's just nobody cares. But that's why I write, is syntax and prose and the rhythm and the musicality. And so when somebody notices that, really just thank you so much. What I hope to get from it is when the book ends, it's one of those, when you watch in Twilight Zone, you kind of go, whoa, okay, did not see that.
What was that?
Did not see that come, did not expect that ending. And yet it was there all along. And it's tough to pull that one off, but it's a challenge as well. And going around promoting this, I'm going back to Berlin in July, where I'll get to read passages of this book, which features, all the people in this book are real people. I got permission to use their names. And so, in the book, Jim Case, my sidekick, is going to be in the audience, and I get to read to Jim Case, which is really cool.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So all you serial killer types in Berlin, watch out. Joe's coming to town, and he's looking for a sequel. So don't do anything while he's there.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you good luck with this book.
Thank you so much.
It sounds like such a great ride. I ordered it. It's coming So I'm anxious to read it. And I know that anybody who picks up that book will not be disappointed.
Well,
So thank you.
yeah,
Hopefully I'll see you in BoucherCon in August.
yeah, I'll be there.
Okay. All right. Well,
Thanks for having me.
thanks again. Thanks to Joe Clifford, author of Say My Name. Again, his self-maligned, wonderful book, Shadow People, is out there currently. He's got other standalones, the Jay Porter series is out there. So if you can't wait for Say My Name and you want the hard copy and not the paperback, there are other books out there on Amazon of his that you can get. If somebody loaned you one of his books, please take the time to write a review. There are lots of different ways you can support authors besides buying their books, although buying their books is good. But reviews, talking to your friends, we do what we can to support writers because writers are artists and it's sometimes tough to make a living. So if you want to keep enjoying their books, you have to keep supporting them. So that was my rant and I'm done. But I want to thank you all for being here and we will see you next week on the SCWA Hump Day Book Tour. Bye.